Starting and my thumb's in the corner.
Your thumb's always in the corner.
Yeah, but it's really cute and lined up in the corner. I did a good job today.
You did. You really did.
There's Liz.
Good morning. For those of you who are watching this at not morning, good whatever time it is,
Yeah,
but it's morning.
By the time we get this up, it won't be morning anymore. We have learned this. We have learned that by the time we finish filming, which is usually close to 10 o'clock, and then I edit it if it needs to be edited, which as long as it doesn't freeze,
We're good.
we're good. And I just tack something on the end, maybe for, I was gonna use a bad word, for S and G, and one of those words is giggles. And
What?
Here, I'm left-handed, so I hold this the backwards way. I should hold this so y'all can see my mug. It says, "Yarn is cheaper than therapy."
It's true.
Well, I've had some knitters who debate that, who say, well, it depends on what yarn you buy. But, technically. Anyway, I lost track of what I was saying.
We edit.
Oh, yes.
And then we pick thumbnails sometime around lunch.
Yeah, well, just trying to have it share from iMovie to YouTube takes at least an hour, if not two. And that's only if it doesn't fail in the middle. So, internet. It's teaching us how hit or miss our internet can be at times, because if the internet hiccups, we gotta start over. Yeah, we think that's what's happening if you see a cut in the middle of this and we have to restart again. We think that's what's happening, because it's not always when the weather's bad. So
It's weird. So good morning. I'm Liz, the minion at Sundragon Art and Fiber in Brevard, North Carolina. That's Rebecca. She's drinking her morning coffee. She's the boss at Sundragon Art and Fiber in Brevard, North Carolina.
I wiped the coffee off my chin. I'm drinking coffee right now because Liz is my coffee mule. It's Bernie coffee. Some of you know Bernie's her husband. Bernie roasts and brews coffee, and she started bringing coffee in for me at least a year ago, maybe, or something. And I was like, no. I have an AeroPress at home. I make my own coffee. I'm good. And I got hooked on her coffee. So now I have care packages of coffee. Even when she was at home, I wouldn't let her come into the shop.
We do a prisoner exchange of coffee. Because one of the things you have to do as a minion is keep your boss alive. And if coffee's gonna do that.
So again, the reason I'm drinking it right now, you see what happened was.
Quick morning?
You see what happened was. Now that we're here 2 days a week, and we're here unofficially Wednesdays and Friday mornings, to do packages and maybe an outside lesson, maybe all the things we can't do when we're here Tuesdays and Thursdays because it's insanely busy. She gives me at least 3 different things of coffee throughout the week that I have to make last throughout the weekend. And usually I'm pretty good at that. Usually. However...
Not so good this morning?
No.
Oh, you brought it in on Sunday.
No.
Oh.
You see what happened was. I woke up Sunday morning to no power at my house. And I had at least one Zoom lesson and some hangout time that was going to be happening on Zoom, because that's how people hang out. It looks like Liz and I are hanging out all the time. We are only in the same space when it's work. And apart from that,
it's FaceTime or Zoom.
It's FaceTime or Zoom. And my house, so yay North Carolina mountains, I do love them. But one of the quirks of them is we live in a cellular dead zone. So we live in a place where if I want to call people, I don't have a landline. I mean, how many people out there, raise your hands, don't have a landline anymore?
Oh, I have one.
Oh, well. The shop has a landline. That actually causes problems because people try to text the shop phone. So we don't have a landline. And so that means if the power goes out, the only way we were able to contact people at our house was through Wi-Fi. So if the power goes out, we can't even call the power company and let them know our power's out. So I came into town on Sunday just to use the Wi-Fi and the power.
And brought her coffee.
And I brought my coffee with me. And I tried to ration it because I have to ration it on the weekends. And I put it in the fridge. And when I went home, because it was just me here, and I'd been here for almost 12 hours, I forgot. So this morning, I had one little itty bitty container left at home, which I broke between Monday morning and Tuesday morning. It meant I had a quarter cup of coffee this morning at home. And this is about a quarter to a half cup of coffee that was left here at the shop. So now you have the very long story of why I'm drinking coffee on camera.
Welcome to the Sundragon Sideshow, the adventures of Liz and Rebecca.
Oh, that took a good 5-6 minutes. Awesome. No,
This is how our day goes all the time. Like squirrel and coffee and
what? Yeah, cool.
Yeah. Don't look outside.
So many people.
Yeah. The sun came out and they are all out on the patio drinking coffee.
You realize because Harder Brevard put out a map and marked us as a seating area. Marked that as a seating area. So now there's people. And we love people. We miss y'all so much. So much. But people in public spaces right now just makes me twitchy. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So what should we talk about, Liz? So we don't look out there.
Oh, so I didn't get much knitting done.
I did, kind of. I'll show you in a minute.
I finished.
We're listening to Liz right now.
I finished one project on what? Monday? No, Sunday. So.
I think that sounds like getting a lot of knitting done.
No, I only had a few rows left. But like yesterday, I didn't knit. Yesterday was Monday. I didn't knit yesterday.
What day was yesterday? I don't remember anymore.
It was Monday, I think, because we didn't come into work.
Because today is our Monday.
Today is our Monday.
Yesterday was real Monday.
Yeah. So I didn't knit. I went to Sam's. That was scary. Like people, I felt like I was leaving my protective bubble, heading in a different direction, and it was weird. But Sunday, I finished my hat, except for the tassel. I haven't put the tassel in there, but.
And she's hoping the tassel makes her like it more.
Yeah, because I don't. I mean, I love the colors. I love the thistles. I don't love the shape. And that's just because I like my gnome hats where they just.
She likes her gnome hats where they drag on the floor. From her head down.
This is kind of just slouchy, and I'm not a.
Well, you know what Carol. Shout out to Carol. You know what Carol would say. Well, why don't you Carolize it and make it into a gnome hat?
That requires way more math than I'm willing to put into a project because I decrease on my gnome hats every 2 inches, and that's not going to work for the thistle sweat.
But you put a lot of math into your gnome hats that you create from scratch.
Yep, but that math is already in my head. This I have to alter the charts. Like,
well, you could. Never mind. I was gonna say, you could just take the top of it, and just keep going with decreases and not put more. Just have the top part be the ferrule, and then like rip out the very top decreases and just start decreasing from there, or something. But that also means ripping out, and
I'm not taking it apart.
That was a discussion that should have been had before she finished the hat.
I'm glad I did it. I like it. I will probably wear it. It's just not my favorite style of hat. So anyway.
I know. Okay, again, raise your hand out there. I got to make sure which hand's going to show. This hand's going to show on camera. Raise your hand out there if you've ever made something and never worn it.
Oh, I know lots of people that have never worn stuff, but
it was cool to make it, and it's been made. And yay, you know.
I did buy the tablet cover pattern and the phone cover pattern. The iPad. Yeah. It's good. Anyway, yeah. Anyway, I did buy that
It's fun.
in the thistles, the same pattern, but I'm gonna make a purse. I'm gonna do it on worsted weight and make a purse.
Mm-hmm. I mean, half the reason I wear most of what's in the shop was we started a YouTube channel.
Yeah.
And it forced me to have to kind of wear stuff. And, excuse me, my coffee's making me burp.
Then you got Sun Dragon shirts. And
Then I got Sun Dragon shirts, and right now I'm showing them off. If I put a shawl on, y'all wouldn't be able to see my Sun Dragon swag, which you too can order. We just got a really big order of Sun Dragon shirts. I picked them up yesterday. That was my one venture out of the house yesterday, was to drive to Arden to get y'all shirts. So if you've ordered one in the past couple of weeks, as long as it wasn't like the end of last week, because it took them, like, they got behind because a lot of people are starting to order things again and they have to retrain staff coming back on, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So thank you to everyone who ordered directly from them in May. I got a list just yesterday as well for that. So
Sweet.
that was very cool. We appreciate the support. So y'all might be getting an email or call from us to say, hey, your shirt's ready. Or we may, if you wanted it mailed, just be sending it tomorrow in the mail. Awesome.
One of my jobs today.
Maybe. There's a whole list. I have a bunch of emails to answer and get back to, and there's packages, and there's, reasons we can stay in business. Yay!
Yay.
So, yeah, we have stuff to do today. So what are you working on right now?
Happy on number whatever.
That's the Zoe one.
Yeah,
right?
it's the Zoe one. I will be switching. I'm on section 1, row 9, even though they're not technically rows.
Yeah, or we've been calling them sections, even though there's 3 big sections, so we need like another name for that.
Yeah.
And then the smaller sections within it, so that
Yeah.
gets confusing.
I kind of call them rows, but
Yeah.
anyway, it's not. So when I get done with section 1, big section 1, I'm going to switch it out so that the teal is the main color and the red is the contrasting color, so it'll be opposite of this.
Which means she had to buy more yarn.
Yeah. It's not a thing.
It's not a thing.
And so
I left my Papillon at home today. I made progress, but not enough to be showing it's negligible. So I didn't even bring it in today.
I just brought 2 Papillons, and I brought my sweater if I felt like working on it. No extra accomplished in there. It's
so I had fun. Well, actually, my wrist even hurt a little bit yesterday and today, because maybe I was, not that I was knitting too much, but more than I'm used to knitting,
that, and you were playing yarn chicken. There's a little bit of stress in that.
There's a little bit of stress in that. So, I finished my chain, and I was like, ooh, I think because of the colors, I should only need 2 skeins of my darker color, this guy, and 1 skein of this. I think I can do it with just 3. And as I was getting towards the end, I'm like, I don't know, because it turns, so Cheryl Faust is the one who wrote this pattern, and she used worsted weight yarn that comes in 50-gram skeins, and these are 100-gram skeins. So she could use 200 grams of this, 2 skeins, and 150 grams of her contrast, which again, that's a skein and a half of this. And I had to modify it a little, because here, I'll show you when I was done with it, with the modifications. This is how much yarn I had left.
Yards, like under
Like-
5.
Like the black, the charcoal, I should say. That's like a yard. But I also did more with the black than the pattern called for, because the pattern calls, I'm gonna pull the thing up. I know, you're all like, dude, just hold the freaking shawl up. And I haven't yet. But I want to explain this before I do. Otherwise, I will be talking at you through the shawl for a while. This is like 2 grams of yarn right here. So I finished the last color work section of the white with like 2 grams of yarn, and the edge down here, she wrote it so that like the last 5 rows plus the bind off was also in your contrast, which is very pretty. But I knew I wasn't going to have enough here. I would have had to crack open a second skein of yarn. So I was like, let me play yarn chicken with just the darker color, the main color, and see if it works. Just barely. Just, oh my lord, barely. And here's the thing I'll say about that, again, before I hold this up, is someone might watch this and say, oh cool, then 3 skeins of yarn, I can make this shawl. Again, remember, I had a yard, maybe a little more than a yard left of the main color. That's only if you have the same gauge, the same stitch count per inch that I did, or smaller than me. Otherwise, you're going to be unhappy. If you're a looser knitter than me, doesn't mean you knit incorrectly, it just means you're a looser knitter than me. You will be making a sad face. So,
yarn chicken's never fun.
it's a little harrowing.
Fail.
Yeah. So
that is
this,
so good.
it's not blocked yet, but this is my shawl. It starts, whenever it starts small and expands like this crescent shawl, it will have a little bubble. And sometimes that comes out in blocking and sometimes it doesn't. So you can see the bottom half right now. I'll show you an edge. Look how pretty that is. Gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous. Here's half of it. That might be the best way to display this.
Do you
and
want
I'm
me to
gonna-
hold?
In a second. We'll try both holding it up. But then, hey, this might be a really nice thumbnail.
Yay! It would be.
I'll try to smile and not look too crazy goofy. Hi, here's my thumbnail. Okay. So this is, as we were talking about before, is mosaic. So here, we're trying to be good social distancers because my contact group has enlarged slightly, and we're trying to be good about this. So
That
there
is
we go.
so pretty.
Yeah. It's got chain, and then smaller chains in different colors at the bottom. It's really, really pretty. It was a fun knit. Again, it's mosaic technique. So, and the little bit of yarn I had left right there. Mosaic is where you're only working with one color at a time. So, with these 2 colors, the ecru and the charcoal, by the end of this, I was going all the way across with the charcoal, knitting charcoal stitches, slipping ecru stitches, and then coming back across. And then picking up the ecru and knitting across with ecru and slipping charcoal and coming back. And Cheryl Faust figured out how to do it so it looks really cool. The most you're ever slipping is 3 stitches. So if we flip it around, we're just gonna hold it upside down. This is the back side. And the back side, it looks a little cleaner than 2-stranded color work where both colors are going across. But you can still kind of see, like here's where stitches were slipped. You can still see what's going on. So Liz is turning her stranded color work mosaic, what the inside or the back looks like. I think mosaic is a nice warm-up if you're not sure if you want to do the stranded stuff, because like, and this is just cool. This is garter. So every row is knit. It just means when you're on this side of it, when you slip stitches, you need to move the yarn so you don't get floats on this side of it.
Yep.
The clean side versus the muddy side. The clean side is the outside is gonna be so pretty. I still haven't woven ends in. I suppose I could have been a little bit, like I could have made these tails not as long. I still wouldn't have had enough yarn to do the bottom. And I just, shameless plug, I just made a video about weaving in ends. And you don't want to make these ends too short. If you make these ends super short to conserve yarn, you're going to have a harder time weaving your ends in and having your piece look good when you're done. So, you know. If I get around to it, I will try to block this, and so you can see what the difference might be. Blocking might help this little bubble at the top flatten out a little bit more, and it might help all of this just settle a little bit more. But one way I always like to wear shawls is, oh, the tails
Are
are
you
stuck.
stuck?
I like to wear them wrapped around my neck, like this. Which, then I'd have to figure out how to creatively... One of the cool things about wearing it like this, apart from looking like an idiot trying to do it on live TV, is if this doesn't calm down, this little bubble in the center, I can always flop it in and not have it show. I can always do something creative with that. But this right now, this is the whole... My newsletter I put out yesterday said, what to do in June when it still feels like March. This will help you remember that it's not March, because you will overheat in this right now. But it could be a fun knit that doesn't take as long as the other thing I'm working on. Because the other thing...
worsted on a bigger needle.
Yes. 7s and 8s, I think, for that. And then, before I move on to the other thing, I bound off with a 5. And when I first saw that in the instructions, I went, that's ridiculous. Why would I bind off with a smaller needle? Because usually, to have a not tight bind off, you go up sizes in needles, right? But it was Jenny's stretchy bind off. Not Jenny's surprisingly stretchy bind off, because apparently I think they're different. I have not investigated that, but Jenny's stretchy bind off, which involves a backwards yarn over, knit a stitch, pull the first stitch and the yarn over it, and then backwards yarn over, knit a stitch, pull the backwards yarn over and the first stitch over. And it works, but you need a tighter needle so it's not a huge floppy thing. So that was interesting to try a new bind off. I actually enjoyed that. It made the yarn chickening more stressful, because I'm like, I'm doing a yarn over in the middle of these stitches. I am going to eat up all my yarn. And I almost did. But the other thing that I worked on a little bit this weekend.
Oh my gosh. I've only seen this on camera, so I haven't seen it.
I worked on my hug shot, and it's going to be hard to show it all off. Maybe I can do it like this. Hug shot is the Casapinka, two fingering weights, one solid and one variegated. And what we did was, I'm using one tonal, and one half and half yarn, dipped and dappled, they call it. And people are like, ooh, it looks like Christmas. And I'm like, Christmas in June. I'm like, if your Christmas has hot pink in it, sure.
It looks like Christmas on a screen. It does not look like Christmas in real life. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm looking at it going, oh my gosh.
Well, you see what happened was, I saw, let me get the skein, and I'll keep talking to you. So Liz doesn't have to vamp. I was like, ooh, I think we have a few skeins left of this bod dipped and dappled. This is what it looks like in the twist, what I'm knitting with. And I said, I think I want to use that for my hug shot. So Liz picked me out a color to go with it. And she looked around, and she picked out this tonal green from Fiber Space.
Isn't that the sea glass?
It's sea glass.
Yeah.
Sea green. Sea green. The sea glass one is the light.
The light one. That's
that
right.
She tried, but it doesn't
work.
It doesn't go with the yellowy greens in this. So this is what I'm using. And let me tell you. So, by the way, hug shot free codes
with yarn purchase
go all the way through June 14th. And this one, she advertised it as being similar to the Breathe and Hope, but not as complicated, because Breathe and Hope had some knit into the stitch below, and people were going, what? Some people loved it, and some people, what? This one's been fun. I stalled out on the Breathe and Hope, mostly because of lack of time. I made time for this one. So this one, the very beginning of it is a lot of knitting, but there's some slip stitches in there to make a textured pattern. And then with only one of the colors, with your variegated, you're doing kind of a woven stitch, which isn't hard. It's slip stitches again. And then there's some slip stitches with the other color when you're going back and forth, but there's some stockinette. There's some knit and purls in here. And then there's that woven section again. And now I'm in a section that has some, every other row you're changing colors. You have some slip stitches, and you have some seed stitch. So, or like one row of like knit one, purl one. It's not quite seed stitch, because then the next row doesn't change from that. But there's interest, and there's different things happening to keep you interested. And then a little bit of, do this thing you did before again.
Is it an asymmetric triangle?
It's an asymmetric triangle crescent.
Oh.
Because, do you see when I try to hold this up, it curls? Just like this one curled. But the chain that curled, that one curled because it started at the center and you're expanding on both edges. This one, on the wrong side row, you're increasing 4 stitches. Every wrong side row. There were a few rows where you did it on the right side too, but only a few. This one, how it's getting its shape, it's not starting in the middle and going out. It started down here at the corner, right? On the right side rows, whatever else is happening in the row, on the right side row, you start with purl 1, knit front and back, which is an increase, and at the end of the row, you knit 2 together, which evens out. You increase and then you decrease, which just shifts it. And then on the wrong side row, at the end, which is the same end that you did your increase on the right side, it's the end of the wrong side, you increase. So it's increasing over here, but it's decreasing slower over here. So what happens is it's going like this. So, hence the triangle crescent. I'll show you another one.
I'm pretty loyal to just standard
Just
triangle.
standard, I know. Some people who just want to spice things up a bit. You spice things up in other ways though, so it's fine.
I do.
I didn't know if I was gonna get a look.
No, I do.
So this one I showed off last week, the fancier mosaic thing, the walk in the woods. This is also a crescent, but maybe not as extreme of a crescent. But this one, if I hold it up, you can see that it's triangle, but it curves, and it's rolling at the bottom, so it's kind of hard to show you. But it's a popular style. There are several popular styles of triangles or variants on them. There's triangles where it starts in the center and gets bigger, and that's what the papillon is, and that is Liz's happy spot. This one, depending on how fast it grows, that's why this one is considered a crescent wrap instead of a triangle one, because it grows, if it grows really exponentially fast on the edges and not in the center, that's what makes it a triangle. Let's talk about geometry of shawls. If it increases on the edges, I gotta come in the camera a little bit, edges and center, you're going to have a triangle one like the papillon. And there are ones that aren't as fancy with the back and forth as the papillon. That like the Reina is one. And some of these I will forget I even mentioned because, I'm still drinking my coffee. So I might not get all of the links in the comments. But the Reina is a classic one that we recommend to people. It doesn't have a lot of short rows, but it's got some interest to it. The Delphinia is another one. Again, increasing at the edges and in the center. Triangle. If you're only increasing at the edges, you will get a crescent, because there's no increase in the center to drop that center point down. And then there's triangles that start, instead of at the center, they're increasing on the edges. They start from a point and they increase out. And depending on how you do that, if you just start at a point and you increase like on the same edge every single row, or every other row for that matter, you will have a straight triangle. And some good examples of that would be like the Hitchhiker, which has an edge to it, but it's going like this. Pearl Soho has an easy garter triangle wrap, something like that. That is just like boop. The Anissa that I showed off that I can see over there has a fancy edge, but it really is a triangle. It starts in the corner and it just classically goes out. And then these guys, triangle but also crescent, it's kind of in between. It's gonna spiral, but it is starting from small stitches and going out. Like the Hug Shot, I am increasing at this point, and I think it's gonna continue. I have not read ahead in my pattern. Sometimes that's bad and sometimes that's good. Every wrong side row I am adding 1 stitch is how it's going so far. Yes, I'm doing a knit front and back, which is an increase, which I've made a video about. Yes, there's a knit front and back at the beginning of one row and the end of the other row. But one row that starts with a knit front and back also ends with a knit two together.
So you're taking away the one stitch.
So you don't change stitch count on that, even though you've slid stitches over in a way.
It's almost like a yarn over knit two together, where you're
like in lace work, you balance it out.
Where you're creating a stitch, but you're taking a stitch away. So
that's how all the pretty open lace work happens: is creating but reducing. Unless you want to be making a triangle shawl where you want to keep the add-ons. Anyway.
I just like the classic triangles. They're my great-grandma shawls.
And those are the shawls that are really popular in the movies and TV shows right now. Like Outlander and Little Women both use essentially the same shawl. Different time periods. But they're using classic garter triangle shawls.
And those shawls were prevalent because they were fast. You could, they were easy. There wasn't much reading some of the old books on how to do it. It's like, here's a picture that we want you to replicate. Here's kind of instructions. But, like, I find it very difficult to go back and look at some of the old shawls and try and figure out what they're trying to tell you to do.
I know. Well, and part of that is, like the classic triangle shawl, I feel like it's something you could learn how to do without being able to read.
Yeah.
So for people who weren't literate, you could learn how to do it and you could replicate it over and over and over again because you didn't have to read a pattern. I'm sure that's half the reason why it was so popular. Fancier stuff, you didn't have to read to do that either. You could look at pictures, you could make it up on your own. There's plenty of reasons why that would have been popular as well.
But it would have also been easier to do in a darker environment because if you're knitting in the wintertime,
you can't necessarily see.
And you have candle power.
Yeah. I can't see.
You can
although if it's wool, it wouldn't catch anyway.
Yeah, you can feel the stitches.
Yeah.
And you don't have to go, okay, this is how many I felt to do a yarn over. You just knit.
For people who aren't there yet, where you can knit without looking at it, if you're knitting all the time, you'll get there. You'll figure it out. I used to be able to wig out my students by knitting and not looking at them, and they'd be like, not looking at them and not looking at my work. Again, coffee still sinking in, and they would just be like, what? They would think it was the craziest thing they'd ever seen. So, yeah. Anyway, no, and I think about it like, a lot of predominantly women in history, like they had to do samplers or they had to do tasks over and over, handmade things, and this is something that any skill level could probably handle, could probably successfully complete. So you just throw in a new color when you want some stripes, it's classic, it's great. So anyway, if I remember, I'll put, is it the 1864?
1864, 1865, somewhere in there.
That. We'll try to look it up. I'll see. Depends on how busy it gets.
Winter
what I'm
shawl.
able to look up. Yeah. Goodies, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Anyway. Oh, look, we're over half an hour. That's because I went off about why I had to drink coffee for like 6 minutes at the beginning of this. So, yeah, I think we've talked enough. Before we go. So this little guy, just to tie it all in, haven't done a darn thing on him. He shows up better against this shirt though. This is the shawl. It's a lace shawl. So speaking of the yarn overs and knit two togethers and things, we can come back to him more when I maybe actually do more with him. But this is doing the same type of thing where it's increasing on the edges, but not super fast. There technically isn't an increase in the center, but I will still end up with a triangle shawl because it's a gentle increase on the edges. It's staying balanced rather than the crescent ones, which are doing like the increases that would happen in the center, they've distributed to the edges. That's what makes it a crescent. This one's going to stay a triangle because it's got balanced increases on the edges.
It's a bottom up.
Yeah, that's also another thing. Yeah, top down, you've got to have, that's a very good point. Bottom up, you can control the increases in a way that you have to do differently from a top down. And I can't tell you how many people have started a top down triangle shawl and gone, it doesn't look like the picture because they think what they're working on is the top, is the bottom, but it's the top.
Generally, when I'm doing a top down, I have to pull it off of my needles and bend my needles just a little bit
And
to
let it
where
see.
to where I can see.
Which is what you would do with this guy.
Yeah.
Like the bottom edge of it, the bottom edge of what she's working on is actually the top edge of the shawl, if that makes sense. Whereas the bottom edge of what this is, like what's up on the needles, is actually going to be the top. Different construction. It's like a top down or bottom up sweater.
Yep.
All right. So now that all that has happened, there's more things we probably could have talked about, but I think this is a good place to stop. Because, we got 10 minutes until all heck could break loose. And I need to finish my coffee.
Yeah.
For only a half cup of coffee, I've been nursing it for quite some time.
It's probably time to go microwave again.
No, if I microwave this, it would evaporate. I'm just gonna drink it. It's room temperature to lukewarm, just the way I like it.
Just like your food.
Shush. Check in with us later about how lunch went, because I will probably only be eating it after it cools down
A lot.
That's because it comes from like days of having the shop so busy I just could not get to it. So I've just learned to eat it at room temperature. All right. We love you all and we miss you. And believe me, if we felt it was safe to have you in the shop, we would have you here. Right now, we're even concerned about ourselves in the shop, again, because my contact group has increased slightly. So we're going to take precautions as soon as we're done filming. And so if you see us wandering around the shop with masks on, now you know why. And hopefully I have not been breathing too loud. If we're really worried, we'll put up a partition, but it's such an open air place.
We could move the sample rack right here,
and then it would be like the side by side show. Oh my gosh! Oh my gosh! We might have to try that sometime this week, just for S's and G's. All right, bye. We miss you all. We love you all. Please stay safe. Please, please.
Stay tuned for more adventures of Liz and Rebecca. You know what? I'm not wearing this one right now. I'm wearing my smoking one.